This is Professor Henry Wilson. I'm working from home, staying and working from home. Today, I want to give a short lecture, to share a lecture about economic recovery strategies after this pandemic. I want to say that this lecture is dedicated to county leaders, the governors, senators, women reps, agriculture and industrialization ministers, and indeed anybody interested in economic recovery after the current pandemic. I want to say that every pandemic requires a recovery strategy. Maybe we may not need to wait until the pandemic is over. Recovery strategies could start as early as now. I want to talk a little about facts about Kenya's agriculture, which could be very similar to many other African agricultural countries, Asian, and other developing nations. In Kenya, according to the last 2019 census, 68.9% of the population lives in the rural areas. That's about 70% of the population is rural. And more women than men live in the rural areas. Agriculture directly contributes to 26% to GDP, but indirectly, through linkages with other sectors, agriculture contributes 27%. So we can comfortably say agriculture contributes more than 50% to the GDP of the country. Likely, same figures for many other developing countries. Agriculture employs 40+% of the total population in Kenya, and 70+% of the rural population. Agriculture contributes 30+% to rural poverty reduction. So what do these figures tell us? They tell us that agriculture is actually the backbone of Kenya's economy. And I can say without blinking my eye that that's true for many other African and Asian economies. Agriculture is important. And therefore, any recovery strategy that does not consider agriculture in the developing countries like Kenya does so at its own peril. I want to base my talk on value chain-based clusters for rural industrialization. I want to think that this is a candidate strategy for economic recovery for Kenya's counties. And like I said, this pandemic is global, so many other agricultural-based countries could also consider value chain-based clusters as recovery strategy. They can start right now thinking about it. But wait a minute, what's a cluster? A cluster is a number of the same things growing or held together. And therefore clustering in matters development, economic development becomes banding together similar small businesses. Indeed, China benefited from clustering. China is where it is, largely because of cluster approach to industrialization. And in 2009, Kenya's National Economic and Social Council recommended cluster development as a strategy. Vision 2030 advocates for regional clusters as industrialization engines. So I'm not talking from the blues. It is something that has already been envisaged. So I am probably just trying to add value to the same. Indeed, look, in 2019, President Uhuru Kenyatta launched this special economic zone in Mombasa under the theme of industrial cluster development. So, need to accelerate that kind of thinking. And now, what's a value chain? A value chain is the full range of activities needed to create a product or service from inception to the end. Let me demonstrate it via a simple agriculture value chain. There's the pre-production stage, there is the production stage, there is the post-production stage, there is the processing stage, and then the consumption. Value added at every stage. You may now want to understand why the value added tax kind of punishes the consumer most. You can see at every stage value has been added and the consumption destroyed that value. Consumption benefits from all the values that have been added at every stage. And therefore economists want to say that because consumers destroy the value that has been added, therefore they should pay for it more. But that's not my talk today. Now, let's look at every stage. Look at the pre-production. At pre-production, activity include provision of seeds, fertilizer. This is like R&D. We want to come up with the best seeds, best fertilizers. So activities of R&D go on. At the production stage, tillage, harvesting, technologies, activities that require, that go into production. At the post-production, we have the preservation. We don't have a lot of post-harvest losses. Preservation, packaging, sales, activities that are going at the post-production. At the processing, we're talking about value addition, converting raw materials to finished goods. We have technologies that produce those. And at the consumption, of course, we have to cook, the cookeries, all that technology. Look at it therefore, that just by developing this value chain, we are also developing sectors that provide inputs into that value chain. And of course, the transportation, the communication, the networking that goes all along all the value chain stages. So this is a simple agricultural value chain. But a typical one will be what we're now looking at. There's the production, there's the harvesting and transport, there's the primary processing and storage, there's the secondary processing, there's the distribution, packaging and handling, and the wholesale and retail market. Again, these are the activities that go on along every stage of the value chain. I hope you're starting to understand my proposal that we look at the value chain. Because if we develop that value chain, we are also developing the activities that feed the value chain. I elect the oil crops in Kenya as an agricultural value chain that can be developed and therefore act as a recovery, as one of the recovery strategies. Which are some of the crops, the oil crops in Kenya? Canola, castor, groundnut, simsim, soybean, sunflower. Those are the key oil crops in Kenya. And my preliminary survey shows that they can be grown in those areas that are cycled red. I counted the counties in those areas and I got more than 50% of Kenyan counties with potential to grow the oil crop. Bungoma, Busia, Homa Bay, Kakamega, Kilifi, Kirinyaga, Kisumu, Kitui, Kwale, Kisii, Laikipia, Lamu, Machakos, Makueni, Mandera, Meru, Mombasa, Murang'a, Nakuru, Narok, Nyandarua, Nyeri, Siaya, Taita Taveta, Trans Nzoia, Uasin Gishu. That's my preliminary survey. We probably have more. I mean, if Meru can do it, then Embu can do it. Probably Isiolo too. So, more than 50% of the counties of Kenya have potential for one or the other oil crop. Now let's see some actors along the oil crop value chain. We have at the production, we have the small farmers, farmer associations, input providers. You see, as we develop the value chain, which people, who are we actually also developing? It is actually the bottom of the pyramid and the people that need the first link in the value chain. At the harvesting and transport, we are again talking of small farmers. Remember the rural population of Kenya, more than 70%, and therefore, as we develop this value chain, we are targeting those many, and most of them are women who are in the rural areas. So, at the harvesting and transport stage, smallholder farmers, farm associations, logistics companies, transportation companies. At the primary processing, we are talking of primary processors, oil pressing, for example. We have machinery suppliers, because the processing requires machines. So as we focus on the value chain, we are also generating demand for machinery. Secondary processing, we have the secondary processors, again machinery suppliers. Distribution, packaging and handling, we have packaging companies, we have logistic transport companies producing packages, be it gun sacks, be it bottles, be it tins, all those packaging materials. So we concentrate on the value chain and we create demand for others. Wholesale and retail markets. We have grocery stores, supermarkets, food and beverage companies. So these are some of the actors along the oil crop value chain. So you develop the oil crop value chain and you are developing all these, and we have seen that they form 70% of the country. Now, let's see some industrial activities that can be generated by the oil crop. We have talked of machinery. We have transport machinery. We have farm implements. Packaging. We're talking of bottles, gunny bags, and so on and so forth. We have feeds. When you press the oil, there's the cake. So the cake-based animal feed. Fuel, biodigester, green energy if you want. Fertilizer, when you do the biodigesting, the slurry that remains is much better than the inorganic. This is organic fertilizer, good for the soil. Detergents, oil-based soaps, bar soaps, and all that. So you can see again, as we develop the value chain, we are also generating demand and opportunities to come up with more activities. Concentrate on the value chain, and the demand comes, and we are home and dry. Now let me take a case study of sunflower value chain based opportunities. This is something that I've done research on. I've done it in my county, Bungoma, and therefore what I'm showing here are the results that I got from my research. You see, the value chain of sunflower has the farm, the seed, then there's sunflower processing, and then when you process sunflower, you get the oil, and that oil can be used as vegetable oil, can be used in the cosmetics industry, can be used in soap making. Now, that is the complete sunflower value chain. What value addition am I making to the value chain based clusters? I'm look at along the value chain, and you will see, one, when you have sunflower, you attract bees. The bees are the ones that are going. In fact, we are advised that we also start apiculture, because the bees are the best pollinators, sunflower. So once you have bees, then you have an apiculture value chain. You can make honey, you can make wine, mead, you can make candles. Talk of Machakos, for example. It's already having the honey, there is sunflower. So that is one value chain that is related to sunflower, or what sunflower production can generate. Then, from the seed, from sunflower seed, we can get flour. And this now bakery, gluten-free bakery, much better than wheat, for example. Then, from the processing, you can see the cake that remains back. We can generate cattle value chain, poultry value chain, fish value chain, because the cake can be used to make feeds. So, if I may put it in another way, what are the spin-off value chains that can be generated from the oil crops? We have seen seeds production, crops production, oil pressing, and vegetable oil. This value chain can generate other value chains. We have already talked about apiculture value chain. We are saying processing creates cake, and that creates dairy value chain, beef value chain, poultry value chain, and the fish value chain. So as we develop the oil crop, we are already indirectly, and remember, we said agriculture directly 20% to GDP, but through linkages with other sectors. Now we're talking about intra-linkages here now. one value chain generating another value chain, but those are still agricultural. So you can see, earlier we saw that the input into the value chain, the machinery, the packaging, now we are also seeing a spin-off of other value chains when the oil crop value chain is flourishing. Now, when we have those dairy value chain, beef value chain, poultry, we can now get biogas. From the droppings of the chicken, from the cow dung, from the gut of the fish, we can get biogas. And the biogas is now going to generate rural electricity. Yes, I have done it by experiment in my rural house. And I was using the biogas both for lighting and cooking. And then the fertilizer, as I said, which is organic. So you can see the spin-offs that can come out of developing, focusing on the oil crop, and then others come in. So we can now start seeing the clusters that we're talking about. It is not just one line cluster. In Kenya now, we have many of my researchers, many of my colleagues at university, Professor Mitula, Professor McCormick, they have done a lot of research on clusters, and particularly single crop like the fish cluster in Kisumu, like the cucumber machinery clusters, like the flower, Naivasha flower clusters. But now we're seeing that one cluster can generate other clusters. So let's look at them. Look, when you talk of farm machinery and the processing machinery going into the oil crop, we are already creating a machinery cluster. Machine generation, machine making, appropriate technology. And then from the oil crop processing, we're generating a cosmetics industry. That becomes another cluster. We are generating detergents. That becomes another cluster. Of course, the food industry, the vegetable oil itself, and then the feeds industry. And from the feeds industry, we can do energy industry, green energy. And finally, we are talking of fertilizer industry. And so the oil crop cluster generates other clusters. The focal point is the oil crop, and the oil crop generates others. And we're talking about those other clusters. Look, the beef or the cattle value chain, in itself, it has all those activities. From the cattle, we can have sports equipment, brushes, leather, pharmaceuticals, porcelain, confectionery, all this. So you see, we started with oil crop. It generated feed, and the feed generated cattle value chain, and develop the cattle value chain can still generate others. Poultry, which was born out of the oil crop value chain. The byproducts of poultry, the heads, the legs, the bones, and even the feathers. These wastes are often processed into livestock feed, into fertilizers, and even to pet feed. You can see the multiplier effect, the forward-backward linkages that we're generating just by concentrating on the oil crop value chain. The fish industry. Fishes are actually medicinal. Fishes are sources of oil. Fishes can make glue. Fish fertilizer, emulsion. Fish is a source of animal feed. So you can see that the multiplier effect associated with the oil crop is great. Once we develop the oil crop, we are going to create opportunities for these other clusters and apiculture. 25 plus uses for wax alone. You can see the need. This is wine. And we have many other products there. Candles, brushes, all those bars from the bees. So, my proposal therefore is that we could start as early as now, looking forward. We don't have to wait until the pandemic is over. It might be too late. And so my post-post startup guide is that one, let all counties, like the ones I've counted, identify their key oil crop or oil crops, and then let every county perform a SWOT analysis for its development based on the key oil crop that you identified. And then, having done the SWOT analysis, we can now prioritize the strategies that have been generated from that SWOT analysis for implementation. What am I saying? SWOT simply means, let us, for every oil crop that you have identified as key, let's say sunflower for Bungoma, Simsim for Kilifi, for example, canola for Nyeri. These are already existing, albeit on small scale, and actually, I would say, neglected. We have not focused on them. So, for every crop that you have identified, look at, call it our strengths. What strengths do we have to develop this crop? Then identify the weaknesses. Then identify the opportunities. Identify the threats. Now, with all these SWOT elements, you can go on and say now, which are our mini strategies? Mini means that we want to minimize the weaknesses that we have identified. How can we minimize these weaknesses so that we can tap from the opportunities? Because they're there. Max strategies. You say we have these strengths and there are these opportunities. These are low-hanging fruits. What strategies do we put in place to maximize the use of our strength and tap the opportunity the maximum? Then there are our max mini. There are these threats that are external, they can hit us. How can we maximize the use of our strength to cope with the threats? And finally, our mini strategies. This weakness that we have and these threats that we have, how can we deal with them? And those are now the strategies that will be put in place to develop. I'm persuaded that the oil crop has a rich value chain in itself. There's a lot of spin-offs. And therefore, as I conclude, I want to introduce you to my app, Safari Wiz mobile app. Google Apps, it is a road safety application. Try it. Thank you. And let us have an oil crop day throughout this recovery period. I said it's a possible candidate. I'm convinced that it could work. Thank you.